How did your
Like,
family travels to the UK inspire your love affair with gin?
I would say organically, because as you would imagine, if you're traveling, and my sister lived there for quite a while, so she would want to almost introduce us to the UK culture, and a part of that is introducing us to the UK drinking culture. And that's where it really started, where as a family, we were always passionate about craft spirits, craft beer, craft wine. And then when we would go to visit her, she would be like, "Oh, let's go check out this, gin bar here, or let's check out this distillery." And it didn't take long for it to become almost a bit of a tour, right? We would show up, we would go and check out a bunch of different places, and of course, that was aided by my sister. Every time she came home, she was maxing out her duty-free allowance with as many unique gins as she could get her hands on. And it was honestly a hobby. I guess you could say we all enjoyed it. We would always, check out this new gin or this different tonic water. I can confidently say I never thought we would get to a point where we started a gin distillery, but here we are.
What was the original process like experimenting with small batches at your home in your own kitchen? 'Cause isn't that how it started for you guys? Like you guys were just a little trial and error, a little mad scientist style.
I guess so. It had started actually in beer. I had made beer for quite some time, and that was where a lot of my passion was. And so myself and my brother, we had been homebrewing for years. We understood the fundamentals of fermentation, which of course leads into the base that you need to build for distillation. I think it was really motivated by, well, two things. One, we knew what gin could be, and we couldn't find gins quite like that here. So that became something where we were on a hunt. And when it came to the actual recipe development side, we started on my dad's stovetop with a still, we call it Janet after my great grandmother's name. And it was this little copper still, about this big, and going from grain, and it, the conversion wasn't great, but we kept going, kept going. The very beginning, it was really a proof of concept. Can we do this? Almost more to challenge ourselves. And when we found out that we could, we got more excited, and we said, okay, let's push those boundaries. Let's see what else we can do. And then it didn't take us long to kind of step it up. When we decided that we were going to move forward on starting a gin distillery, we did kind of invest in some lab equipment where we could create batches of gin with a little bit more exact science, I guess you could say. So that part, a lot of fun, and our expectations were low, and we were far surprised by it. So we were pretty happy.
I love moonshine and I love whiskey. And I've always thought about maybe I should try my own house in my house, but I'm worried to blow something up. Were you worried when you're doing this stuff that you could have an implosion, or were you confident because of your craft beer experience that you guys were okay dabbling at the time?
No, I think you have to be very aware of that. I think in any capacity, not acknowledge the risks is unnecessary. Yeah, I think you understand that if you approach it as a science, it's one of the oldest sciences out there, and we've come a long way. And so we have some fairly rudimentary components that make things easier. In fact, I know when we first started distilling, we actually had an ethanol sensor that we could place on the lower area, because ethanol is lower than air, so it would sink. And so we did all these things, and we were very concerned. And you realize, as long as you're following general good practice, you're keeping it pretty reasonable. But it didn't take us long to go, okay, using a traditional still is fun, but if we really want to create a product that we're enjoying, we do have to almost treat it clinically as if it were a lab. So that quickly became the step for us.
So when did you realize that you need a bigger space to create than your kitchen would allow? Because you mentioned craft brewery, just like a fun passion project. At what point did you realize, this is starting to really take off besides just our family?
I don't think it was a market demand, right? It wasn't like there was just people, saying, "Hey, we want your gin, we want to buy it," because it had actually kind of just started off organically as me and my brother and my sister and my dad just being like, yeah, let's try making gin. And so we did that, and that was great. Um, and then it kind of went quiet. Life, we carried on and went about things. But it was really spurred on by my dad, who he sent out an email, and I'll never forget this email because it just said, I'm thinking about career change. What do you guys think about a gin distillery? And we were just sitting there like, it was 4 in the morning. I'm reading this email with one eye. I'm half asleep. Right away, I start messaging my brother and my sister, and I'm just going, what is he thinking? And then we chatted a little bit. We popped over, said, how you doing, buddy? And he made a good point. He said, that gin culture that we all love. He said he doesn't see that here in Toronto. He wants to see that come to life. So he wants to be the the catalyst to make that happen. And I had always been passionate on the beer side, so I was also passionate in the gin, and said I'm down to commit my time and resources to this, and so did my brother, and shortly after my sister as well.
One of the things that you guys are proud of is that your gins have an adventurous flavor. How
Mhm.
do you pull that off?
Well, I think it has to be persistent throughout. You can't just kind of create a gin and then go, oh, this has to this has to fit our branding. You can't just like then tweak it at the very end. So it really was for us about ensuring that throughout the process, that was core to the value, that we were putting that in every step, um, all the way from the selection process on our botanicals. My sister was adamant that it had to be Canadian juniper, adamant, to a point that it led us to working with a nonprofit organization in the far north of Saskatchewan, just to forage our juniper, handpick our juniper. That wouldn't have happened if we had just said, let's just make gin, because that was not the easiest path. So having that consistent pursuit, that it had to be a bit of an adventure. As a family, we're quite adventurous. It had to be an adventure, and it had to represent where we're from, and ourselves. So it had to represent Canada as well. So all of that, you combine that together, and it comes through in the product you create.
I want to dig into that a little bit more because I'm impressed that Canadian wheat, the juniper, even though you guys initially and probably even still today are shaped and inspired by the UK influences,
Mhm.
why wasn't it so important to your sister and to the rest of you to have Canadian wheat and Canadian juniper and all these Canadian influences as well?
I think in many ways, gin is a beautiful representation, oftentimes, of the botanicals that surround the distillery. That is one of the unique things about gin. That while the base is, generally going to be from around the surrounding communities, and that's how alcohol has evolved over, thousands of years, gin has the added benefit of utilizing botanicals. And so as soon as you get into that, naturally people have always gravitated towards selecting botanicals they have access to. So for us, of course, creating a London dry style gin was important, and that was something that we wanted to make sure it was juniper forward on our primary gin. But very quickly we went, there is a whole host of different botanicals in cross Canada that we want to make sure we utilize. And I'll never forget, there was this moment where we distilled on our lab setup about 250 different botanicals by themselves, just individual. So we would just distill juniper, we would just distill coriander, just distill cinnamon, right? Just to get the flavors, and then we would try them and blend them from that. And that was how we developed our recipe. There was a moment where we distilled sweet fern, which is typically used in indigenous teas, and it was sent to us by our foragers. They also sent us chaga, which is also used in beverages, and we were just going through all these things that we had no idea existed in Canada, and they brought incredibly unique flavor profiles. So for us, that's why, while there is some beauty in what a traditional London dry style gin is, there's quite a lot of excitement in taking what's around us and having it come to life. For example, the sumac in our citrus gin. Sumac's everywhere. You'll see it walking down the park, right? It's everywhere. To be able to utilize that and to use the acid that's in that to bring a citrus flavor, that was so much fun. So it's a pursuit of something different, I guess.
What are some of the new or upcoming flavors that you're excited about, and how can you share or tease those with the listeners?
Coming into the last 6 months, we launched the gin and tonic product, which was again a pursuit of Canadian product, right? It's a Canadian tonic water, 1642 out of Montreal. It's our signature gin, and that's it. There's no preservatives, no artificial flavor. So to me, I was a really proud moment to bring that to life, and that's where most of our focus has gone. But I think moving forward, we want to be able to straddle both the premium gin market, which we've been doing since we started in 2019, with as well the ready to drink cocktails or the canned gin and tonic, for example, a product like that as well. And then on the pre-mixed format side, I would love to see a pre-mixed format that captures the essence of our spice gin and as well one that captures the essence of our citrus gin, being as aware as possible that the well, that the scalability when you go to a pre-mixed format, it's big. So you have to kind of get everything lined up and go for it. And so I think we're seeing the G&T panning out very well, and so that's encouraging us to continue to push in that direction as well.
Now, working as a family, you mentioned your dad's 4 a.m. email. When you're reading at 4 a.m. in the morning, getting to work with your brother and dad and sister, what have been some rewarding aspects of this?
It's almost the equivalent of a family dinner, right? A family dinner that just keeps going. So you get to a point where you go, we're in this and we're here together. And there's something so beautiful about knowing that your family is there equally as committed as you, because it is not easy. Opening a business in any business and in any country is hard. And having your family there in those moments where you are just tired and you've just been going and going and you look and that other person who's there with you is somebody who you love, who's been there with you your whole life, there's at least that fundamental knowing that they're there and committed with you, which I don't know if it would be the same if it wasn't family. So to me, it's one of the best parts, and of course, getting to spend time with them. Like they're my best friends. Really, I spent a lot of time with them, so pretty happy about that as well.
Graham, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you.
Not a problem at all. I really appreciate your ability to kind of pick some key questions. It's always nice to be able to think through these things. So thank you.